Does the world really need an electric Porsche Cayenne with 1,140 brake horsepower that accelerates in the same time as a 911 Turbo S? Well, we're about to find out because there's one parked here.
Today we'll be having a look at new bendy displays, talking about charging and wondering why it needs to be capable of hitting 62 miles an hour from rest in 2.5 seconds.
That's going to really annoy 911 Turbo S owners. Now, according to some sources, Porsche has gone completely off the idea of electric, but that's not true.
What's actually happened, in the face of changing regulation, is that Porsche has extended the life cycle of some of its combustion engines. So the current Cayenne will remain on sale with V6, V8 and plug-in hybrid options. The next Cayman and Boxster will now be both EV and ICE too, and the new flagship SUV above the Cayenne will launch as a petrol and e-hybrid initially, instead of just a full EV. So Porsche is going back to a more mixed strategy. But the new Cayenne electric is, well, it's electric.
The top of the range for the electric cars is this turbo that doesn't actually have a turbo, and it has 1,140 brake horsepower, although that is a slight lie, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. It is a range though, and the base of that range is that car over there, and that comes with more like 400 brake horsepower, which sounds much more sensible. And it's a Cayenne, but with definite newness. So let's take a look. For a start, the electric Cayenne is longer, lower and more aerodynamic than the combustion version. From the front, the car looks more structured than before. It's got a lot more horizontal shapes. The headlights are all integrated into one unit. They look a lot cleaner. And then there's some air curtains that are quite striking here on the front three-quarter. Then as we move down the car, you get these big black wheel arch surrounds, which add a bit of bulk to it. And then you can have several different styles of aerodynamic wheels. These are the 22s. And as you come down the car, you've got kind of 3D side skirts, which again, add some tautness to the shape. And it is actually quite low. If I stand next to it, you can see the roofline actually isn't that high. And then as you come around the back, you've got big, strong horizontal shapes again, with a full width light bar and an illuminated Porsche badge, which is also animated because chintz is universal.
But a lot of that styling can move. It's a very active Porsche in more ways than one. The active aerodynamic elements include movable cooling air flaps in the nose like the 911 Turbo S, an adaptive roof spoiler and active Aero blades at the rear of the turbo, which extend the edges and improve the flow characteristics, which apparently leads to an increase in range.
Powering all of this is a 113 kilowatt-hour battery, which should give you up to 398 miles of WLTP range. But the interesting thing about this battery is that it is direct cooled, both top and bottom, and there's the usual 800 volt architecture, so new Cayenne should be a bit of a charging champion. Find a big enough charger and this thing will charge at a rate of 400 kilowatts. Now that means that 10 to 80% will take just 16 minutes. Stick it on for 10 minutes on a big enough charger, you'll add 186 miles of range. That's good. Let's not get that bothered about the practicalities of finding more than 400 kilowatts of public rapid charging and just joy in the knowledge that everything you can put into this car will get hoovered up.
It's also pre-prepared for wireless charging, although it is an option, which is when you just park over an induction pad and the car automatically starts charging, no cables or even getting out. I am promised that if your cat sits under the car it won't get cooked. The system just switches off until your pet or your toddler leaves.
You get twin valve dampers with dual chamber air springs as standard, or you can option a thing called Porsche Active Ride. Now, the pump for it is down here, and essentially what it does is it pumps fluid into each of the dampers so it can independently control each wheel. And that changes all the characteristics of the car, so it can control pitch, yaw, tipping, moving, all that good stuff. It's also got a mode called helicopter mode. If you're in the comfort setting, when you accelerate, it basically lifts up the back of the car and keeps it as stable as possible. And it doesn't sound like this.
Although what no one ever tells you is that it makes some people car sick. And it'll also help if you buy a tow bar, because this thing can tow up to 3,500 kilograms with the off-road package, which is very good for an EV. It'll also be more nimble, because these rear wheels get to steer too, up to 5 degrees of steering angle, which will make this car much easier to park than you think.
Under here is a dual motor setup with Porsche traction management, which should make this thing good for both racetracks and normal roads. And yes, there is an off-road pack if you do venture off tarmac a lot. And those, you guessed it, it's Porsche's carbon ceramic braking system, which this car will need. It's quite heavy, between 2.5 and 2.7 tons. But one interesting fact about these brakes is the brake recuperation on the Cayenne is so sophisticated, it can claw back 600 kilowatts of energy, which means that you probably don't need mechanical brakes up to 98% of the time.
We're probably looking at 3 models, the base with 400-ish horsepower, the S with likely 600, and this turbo with the 1156 PS or 1140 in brake horsepower, none of which will be particularly slow. This turbo gets a possible 1140 brake horsepower and over 1,100 pounds-feet of torque, making it Porsche's most powerful model bar the Taycan Turbo GT. It gets from 0 to 62 miles an hour in 2.5 seconds and hits 161 miles an hour, which is astonishing. But let's ask the question if it's really necessary. Maybe a bit less power and a bit more range? Well, as the old adage goes, more is more.
But actually, you don't get all of the horsepower all of the time. Naturally, from the pedal, the turbo gets 845 brake horsepower, and then you get another 173 if you press the push to pass button, which lasts for 10 seconds, and you get all of it at once if you engage launch control. So essentially, the 845 is a street tune.
And yet those numbers only add up when you use launch control, because that's when you get the full 1140.
And the inside is really very different. Now, the most dominant bit is this curved flow screen. So I just want to talk about this first because I think this is absolutely brilliant. Basically, you've got a 3D rendering of the car here, and then you can just touch different things depending on what you want to adjust. And then on the bottom, on this curved element here, are lots of widgets that control the rest of the car. So if I wanted to change the height of the suspension, for instance, I've just pressed that and press lift, and then I've got more of an access height. If I want to lower the car, I can simply drop it down. This is an optional passenger screen, which you can't see if you're driving and your passenger is watching a movie, but it's interesting that it's all together. So if I change the drive mode here on this little wheel, you can basically see on the screen that's gone into sport and you get a little racetrack, but the racetrack actually goes all the way into the other screen. And then at the bottom, you always have the same widgets down here. So you've got your trip stuff, your battery stuff, different things. Like this car has a set of mood modes. So it basically changes the air conditioning, the noise, the way that the seats are positioned. If you put it in dynamic, unsurprisingly, it goes red and tightens the seat bolsters up. If you're in journey, it's more comfortable, it's cooler, urban. And then if you flick through, there's different themes for the inside. So this is a fairly calm blue version, but if you want full disco mode, you can go pink, black, green. The car's endlessly configurable, but it changes all of the screens to make it feel all the same. Then in front of you, you've got a curved, again, OLED screen, which can have different modes. You can have it in different configurations. And in front of me is a head-up display, which is absolutely massive, that projects things like satellite navigation directions directly onto the road. So it's a bit like a computer game. The ergonomics are fantastic. And then here in the middle, you've got a slide back portion and a push forward bit. Down there is wireless charging, cup holders. And then on this kind of flying buttress element is a thing, what they're calling the Ferry Pad, in honour of Ferry Porsche. So if you're driving down a road and it's bumpy, you rest the heel of your hand here and you can reach all the different buttons without your hand bouncing around and pressing the wrong thing. It's very well thought through. There's a virtual AI assistant to help you with voice control, and you can make the interior entirely animal-free if you want to, although that means that Porsche people have never met my children. There's a programmable glass roof with sunshine control. Look, watch this. Matte front, semi-matte. Look, it's got shapes in it. Matte, yep, and matte rear, and then bold. Let's have a look at that. Isn't that cool? I just like clear. I like a burnt bald head. And it makes noise with the Porsche sound system. So I'm not allowed to drive this car because we're indoors, but if I just do that, you can hear it. And then if I switch drive modes, this is normal. That's sport, a little bit deeper, and then Sport Plus, it gets more of a V8 burble. It's also got a thing called panel heating, so you can heat this armrest and the door panels because forearms need love too. And there's also a communication light, so when you get in the car it kind of welcomes you with a little light display and gives you information on things like charging. As for space, there's more legroom for rear seat passengers, and everyone gets to play with electric heated seats, as standard. The boot is huge at 781 litres with the seats up. And because it's electric, it's got a 90-litre frunk. Ta-da!
So this is a big deal, and really very reasonable value. UK prices are £83,200 for the base Cayenne Electric, with just that and the £130,900 Turbo available at launch. OK, so the Electric S is probably going to be the sweet spot in the range, and there'll still be petrol and hybrid versions for a little while. But as a technical tour de force, the Electric Cayenne looks like it's got all the right ingredients.